Alright everyone, we need to talk about what is happening right now with Cassie, because this situation has taken a very serious turn, and it is not something that can be ignored anymore. Things have become legally complicated, and the consequences here are very real. Cassie has now made a major move, and that move tells us that the pressure is officially on. This is not speculation anymore. This is the court system moving forward, whether people like it or not. Up until recently, it looked like this situation might quietly disappear, or at least stay on the sidelines while other legal matters took center stage. But that is no longer the case. Cassie has now formally entered legal counsel in response to a civil lawsuit filed against her by Clayton Howard, an escort who has been publicly connected to the so-called freak-off events involving Sean Diddy Combs. And this happened only after a federal judge made it clear that the case will move forward, and that Cassie can be legally served through public notice if necessary. For a while, Clayton Howard and his legal team attempted to serve Cassie through traditional means. They tried to locate her. They attempted to deliver paperwork through known addresses. They even tried to serve the lawsuit through Douglas Wigdor, who represents Cassie in her separate legal actions. That attempt failed because Wigdor refused to accept service on her behalf, stating clearly that he was not authorized to do so. Legally, that refusal is allowed, but it does not stop the case. The judge reviewed the situation and ruled that Cassie was effectively unreachable. As a result, the court authorized alternative service, including service through media publication. That ruling is critical because once alternative service is approved, the defendant is considered legally notified whether they respond or not. In other words, silence no longer protects anyone. Under federal civil procedure rules, once a defendant has been properly served, they have a limited window to respond. If they do not respond, the plaintiff can request a default judgment. And in this case, Clayton Howard is seeking $20 million. That means that if Cassie failed to respond after being legally served, the court could, in theory, award him that amount without a trial. That is not a small risk. That is a life-changing financial consequence. That is why Cassie's decision to formally enter legal counsel matters so much. Court records now show that on December 11th, an attorney named Melody, who works under Douglas Wigdor, filed a notice of appearance in the case titled Clayton Howard vs. Sean Combs and others. That filing officially places Cassie on the court docket as a represented party. What is important to understand here is what that filing does and does not do. It does not answer the lawsuit. It does not deny the allegations. It does not admit anything. It does not ask the judge to dismiss the case. It simply confirms that Cassie is now legally represented and that communication will go through her attorney. But even that simple step sends a very clear message. It says that Cassie is no longer avoiding the case. She is preparing to fight it. This filing came after the judge's ruling, not before. That timing matters. The court made it clear that continued silence could result in a default judgment. Only after that warning did Cassie step forward legally. That suggests this move was not optional. It was necessary. Now, let's be clear about something. Entering legal counsel does not mean that Cassie agrees with the claims being made against her. It does not mean she plans to settle. And it certainly does not mean she plans to write a check. In fact, based on everything we know, there is little indication that she intends to pay anything at all. This looks far more like a setup for a legal defense that could extend well into next year. If Cassie does not settle, and if the judge does not dismiss the case, then the next possible step is a civil trial. That would mean Cassie facing Clayton Howard in court, with Sean Combs also tied into the broader legal context of the case. That alone creates a complicated legal picture, especially given everything Cassie has already been through. This is not happening in a vacuum. Cassie previously filed a lawsuit against Diddy that triggered a massive legal and public fallout. She has also gone through pregnancy and childbirth during an extremely stressful period. And now, on top of all of that, she is facing a civil lawsuit from someone who was connected to events that she herself has described as abusive and coercive. This raises a difficult question, and it is one that many people are asking quietly. How does someone who was a victim in one case become the primary target in another? Clayton Howard has acknowledged that his involvement with Cassie happened under the control and direction of Diddy. By his own account, he would not have met Cassie at all if not for Diddy's influence. That alone complicates the narrative. Howard claims that Cassie forced him to engage in acts against his will, that she violated boundaries, and that she imposed additional rules beyond what Diddy required. These are serious allegations, but they exist within a context where power, control, and coercion were already present. That is something a judge, and potentially a jury, would have to consider very carefully. There is also the broader legal reality that there is no such thing as a perfect victim. Human beings are complex. People who are harmed can also make mistakes. That does not erase what happened to them, and it does not automatically make them responsible for everything that followed. Courts are designed to examine nuance, not just headlines. For now, what we know is simple and undeniable. Cassie is now officially part of this case. She has legal representation. A response will be required, and the days of ignoring this lawsuit are over. What comes next will depend on how her legal team responds and how the judge views the claims moving forward. This is only the beginning of the next phase. As this case moves forward, the emotional and legal weight of it becomes harder to ignore. One of the most difficult things for anyone to do is revisit the darkest moments of their life, especially when those moments are being dissected in court filings and public conversations. Cassie is now in that position once again. Whether she wants to be or not, she is being pulled back into a legal battle that overlaps with trauma she has already tried to confront and survive. We also need to address the reality that this lawsuit does not exist in isolation. It is tangled up in statements, interviews, and allegations that go far beyond what has been proven in court. Clayton Howard has made multiple claims, some in legal filings and others in public discussions, that paint Cassie as an active participant rather than someone acting under pressure or control. He has alleged forced drug use, sexual misconduct, and even claims involving sexually transmitted diseases. He has also alleged that Cassie became pregnant by him and later terminated the pregnancy without his knowledge. These are serious accusations, but at this point they are exactly that, accusations. None of these claims have been tested in court. None have been verified through evidence presented to a judge or jury. And that distinction matters, especially in the legal system. Allegations alone do not determine guilt or liability. Proof does. One of the most confusing aspects of this case is why Cassie appears to be the primary focus of Howard's lawsuit, rather than Sean Combs, who by nearly all accounts held the power and control in these situations. Howard himself has stated that Cassie's actions occurred under Diddy's direction. He has acknowledged that the environment, the rules, and the expectations were established by Diddy. That raises an obvious question. Why is the individual with the least amount of power being pursued so aggressively? From a legal perspective, it may be because Cassie is more accessible financially or procedurally. It may also be because civil lawsuits do not always align with moral responsibility. They align with legal strategy. That can feel unfair, but it is not uncommon. There is also the fact that Howard was a professional escort. That does not strip him of rights or protections, but it does complicate claims of coercion and trafficking in the eyes of the court. Judges look at contracts, consent, prior conduct, and context. They examine whether someone was acting independently, under duress, or as part of an agreed-upon arrangement. Those distinctions matter greatly in civil litigation. Cassie's legal team will almost certainly argue that any actions she took were under coercion, manipulation, or control. They may argue that she herself was trafficked, abused, or forced into compliance. If that argument succeeds, it could significantly weaken Howard's claims against her. But that argument has to be made formally, through motions and evidence, not through silence. That is why entering legal counsel was unavoidable. Cassie could not afford to let this proceed without representation. The risk was simply too high. A default judgment of $20 million is not theoretical. It is a real legal mechanism, and judges do use it when defendants refuse to engage with the process. At the same time, it is important to acknowledge the human cost of all of this. Cassie is not just a name on a court docket. She is a woman who has gone through years of alleged abuse, public scrutiny, and now motherhood. Being pulled into another lawsuit at this stage of her life is not just inconvenient. It is exhausting. From what we can see, she does not appear interested in settling quietly. There is no indication that money will change hands voluntarily. That suggests that this case could move into discovery, motions, and possibly trial. If that happens, it will be a long process, one that forces everyone involved to relive events that many would rather forget. For Sean Combs, this case is also a problem. Even if he is not the primary defendant in this specific lawsuit, his name and alleged actions remain central to the narrative. Every new filing, every new hearing, keeps his legal troubles in the public eye. That alone creates risk. What happens next will depend largely on how Cassie's attorneys respond. They may file a motion to dismiss, arguing that the claims lack legal merit. They may challenge jurisdiction. They may argue failure to state a claim, or they may prepare to defend the case fully. Any of those paths will take time. The judge has already signaled a willingness to let the case proceed. That does not mean the judge believes the claims are true. It simply means the court believes they deserve to be heard. That is an important distinction. For now, the most important takeaway is this: Cassie is no longer silent. She has acknowledged the lawsuit through legal counsel. The clock is now ticking toward the next phase, and the outcome will depend on evidence, legal arguments, and judicial discretion, not public opinion. As we look ahead, it is clear that this situation is not going to resolve quickly or quietly. Civil litigation moves slowly, especially when it involves multiple parties, complex allegations, and overlapping legal histories. Cassie's entry into the case does not signal the end of the matter. It signals the beginning of a more formal and structured legal fight. If Cassie's attorneys choose to file a motion to dismiss, the judge will review it carefully. That review will focus on whether the lawsuit, as written, meets the legal standards required to proceed. The judge will not weigh emotions or public sentiment. The judge will weigh facts, legal precedent, and procedural rules. If the motion is denied, the case moves forward. If it is granted, the case could end, at least as it relates to Cassie. If the case proceeds, discovery would follow. That means documents, communications, and testimony could become part of the record. That process alone can be invasive and stressful. It is also where many civil cases either strengthen or fall apart. Claims that sound compelling in filings do not always survive scrutiny. There is also the possibility of a jury trial. If that happens, ordinary citizens will be asked to evaluate complex and emotionally charged allegations. They will be instructed to focus on evidence, not sympathy. That is never an easy task. One thing seems highly unlikely. Cassie paying a quiet settlement to make this disappear does not align with what we are seeing. Everything about her actions suggests she intends to stand her ground. That decision carries risk, but it also reflects a refusal to accept blame for something she may view as a continuation of harm. This case also raises broader questions about accountability and power. When harm occurs within a system controlled by one individual, how do courts fairly assign responsibility to others within that system? That question does not have easy answers. It requires careful case-by-case analysis. For viewers, especially those who have lived long enough to see how legal narratives evolve, patience is essential. Early claims rarely tell the full story. Courtrooms do. Evidence does. And time does. Cassie's life has already been reshaped by legal battles she did not ask for. This is another chapter she must now confront. Whether this case ends in dismissal, settlement, or trial, it will add to an already heavy burden. As this unfolds, it is important to remember that legal processes exist to sort truth from allegation. They are imperfect, but they are structured. The outcome will not be determined by headlines or social media arguments. It will be determined by law. For now, all we can do is watch, wait, and acknowledge that this situation is far more complex than it appears at first glance. Cassie has made her move. The court has made its position clear. What happens next will speak volumes. So at the end of the day, this situation is far from over, and the truth is going to come out slowly, through court filings, legal arguments, and evidence, not rumors or emotions. Cassie has now stepped into this case officially, and whatever happens next will be decided by the law, not the internet. This is a complicated and painful situation with no easy answers, and it deserves to be watched carefully and thoughtfully. I want to know what you think about all of this, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate coverage that gets straight to the point without the noise, make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and stay tuned, because as this case moves forward, we'll be right here following every major update together.